I suppose one couldn't argue that the genre of horror is a bit of an acquired taste. The sense of unease and anxiety that it dispenses is often not for the faint of heart. For some, however, though, these things are more than mere challenge. For some, it's more like a sense of joy. Often images, even in horror films, that are meant to dispense a sense of despair or even fear in a viewer, can often for some, in turn, be more like fun or even amusement. Intentional or not, horror can be both a frightening experience or a legitimately good time. And in some skillful examples, it can intentionally be both in spades.
You don't know what you're talking about. You're all excited reading this legend. Now listen, Wilbur. I know there's no such a person as Dracula. You know there's no such a person as Dracula.
But does Dracula know it?
Now listen to me.
Horror, or at least what is scary, can be subjective, much like humor is. There can even be the rarely perfected hybrid that has undeniable horror and pure comedic intent going hand in hand.
He was murdered in this room, on the very spot on which you are standing.
Wow!
While there are some great examples out there of this,
I ain't got nobody, and nobody cares for me. Igor, Frederick, how did you get here?
I think the mention of horror comedy will bring to mind, first and foremost, the original 3 Evil Dead films. Sort of the standard for such a genre mix. I am willing to bet money, or an eyeball, or a severed hand, that The Evil Dead 2 is the film that for most comes to mind first. Before Evil Dead 2, though, there was, of course, the original. In 1981, director and writer Sam Raimi's debut film was released, entitled Evil Dead. Unarguably a bar-raising classic that got the 80s, a truly inventive decade for the genre, off to a bloody bang of a start. It would launch the career of both Raimi, as well as action, horror, and comedic star Bruce Campbell.
See this? This is my boomstick!
And begin a one-of-a-kind legacy of uniquely branded horror comedy that was instantly recognizable and forever inspiring, equally scary and laugh-out-loud funny, and whose fingerprints are now embedded so deep in the genre, it is nearly impossible to mix horror and humor without being compared to Raimi's truly inventive work. However, it was 6 years later that Raimi and Campbell would forever stamp their names on this genre, and prove once and for all that they were the kings of all things hilariously horrifying.
Hail to the king, baby.
1987's Evil Dead 2. The absolute golden standard for scream till you laugh, or laugh till you scream. Like its predecessor, it was a benchmark in independent horror filmmaking, a gem of 80s horror, a textbook for practical effects. And is a classic, renowned and revered to this very day. Taking everything the original film did well and turning the dial to 11 before breaking it off. More of a retelling or reimagining of the first film than a true sequel, the film doesn't care about much else other than making sure the screen is soaked in blood and that you as the viewer are having a phenomenally good time. It achieves what it sets out to do, and then some. If horror movies make you hide your face behind your hands, or make you want to sleep with the light on, that's great. But if the genre makes you want to throw up the horns and fist bump the person next to you, then there is a good chance that this movie is already a major part of your life. A feast for hardcore lovers of the genre who like their horror films intense, loud, gory, and often self-aware. The movie definitely has its viewers in a blood-soaked passenger seat, and before you can buckle your seatbelts, the movie accelerates nearly non-stop through its house, or I guess I should say, cabin of madness. Sam Raimi knows what his viewers want, and uses everything, the kitchen sink and Bruce Campbell, to provide us with one horrific gag after another. Campbell, a longtime friend of Raimi's, is an absolute treat for the audience. As his sense of comedic timing, willingness to do all his own stunts, and a constantly firing on all cylinders performance makes for one of film's most memorable heroes in any genre. Bruce Campbell plays Ash Williams, a man who finds himself trapped in a cabin of horrors after reading from a sacred book known as the Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
Roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book served as a passageway to the evil worlds beyond.
The book brings forth evil beings known as Deadites, ancient beings who torment Ash and anyone else who finds their way to the cabin. Ash will use whatever means necessary to defeat this evil. Though it may cost him blood, sweat, body parts, and his own sanity in doing so. Thanks to Campbell and Raimi, the film is filled with memorable moments all throughout.
Once in my fruit cellar!
Upon first viewing, you are never quite sure what will happen next, including one of the film's most unexpected, odd, and unforgettable moments, and tonight's scene. At one point in the film, after Ash already had to kill his girlfriend twice, become possessed, and returned back, cut off his own possessed hand, and then do battle with a reanimated corpse version of it, this moment occurs.
Oh, double barrel here! Blow your butts! The kingdom come! See if we don't.
The scene is truly unexpected, even by this film's standards, and yet, it is somehow so earned at the very same time, and honestly opens up quite a few interpretations. After so much has happened in such a short period of time to Ash, so much terror, strain, and stress, there is nothing left to do but laugh. Or perhaps this is more of the torture. The Deadites simply are keeping Ash's expectations out of reach for him. Maybe the Deadites are doing simply nothing more than taunting him, suggesting to him that there will be no victory, no matter how much hell he puts himself through. Or, it could be, Ash is just finally starting to go insane after all he has endured. The scene is fantastic, from the very creative use of practical effects, or to how each inanimate object is characterized and has their own distinctive laugh, to the use of signature Sam Raimi's camera angles, down to all the details through the scene, like the trash bin that is moving across the floor. The door to the cellar is also in on the joke, which is a prominent location in these movies as well. The windows are boarded up, so that is not the wind making the curtains move, so even the drapery is cracking up. The desk lamp making it clear that these objects are as aware of Ash as he is of them, which also may be the only moment in the entire series where Ash and the Deadites form what seem to be a little bond, even if only for a few seconds. The books on the shelf are laughing separately than the bookshelf itself, but I think the greatest detail in the scene, and one that is blatantly obvious, but can also be overlooked, or at least not thought about much on first viewing, is when near the end of the scene, there does come a point where one member of the party isn't laughing. Ash himself, during the climax of this amusing moment, is no longer laughing, but is actually instead screaming. Not in fear, but in agony, an almost painful, sorrowful cry for help, much like how beneath this comedic movie, there beats the cold heart of a horror movie. Beneath Ash's ability to survive and take on whatever the night throws at him, beats the heart of a human being that can only take so much. A room full of laughter where nothing is directly attacking him, and Ash still seems to be lost in a nightmare that no amount of screaming is going to wake him up from. A subtle touch that is bound in human flesh and inked in horror fans' fascination with all things macabre and sadistic. The scene is almost a gift for those who adorn a smile during your horror movie viewings. Evil Dead 2 is the very definition of a good time at the horror movies. Call it scary, call it funny, call it groovy. Sam Raimi knows how to turn a horror movie into a rock show, and Bruce Campbell as Ash is the hero the world has always needed.
Swallow this.
The entire Evil Dead trilogy is worth endless viewings, but there is just something a little bit more about the second one, as Evil Dead 2 has become something of the standard for movies of this ilk, and it has always held a very special place in my heart, as for years I have pulled endless inspiration from it, rather it be for acting, or filmmaking, or editing. Whenever something I was working on needed a little more style or punch, I often turned to a quote by Sam Raimi himself with editing, and he said, "Edit it like rock and roll." Something I've always found myself living by. Truth be told, when it comes to the hybrid of pure horror and pure comedy, I guess Evil Dead 2 is king.
Hail to the king, baby.
You heard him.